Welcome, this is the KOV from Hong Kong. We've made it here to meet up with a special game changer in the industry, Austen Chu, better known as Horoloupe, and we're going to see his new store, Wristcheck, who just got an $8 million funding. For this video, I'm wearing a 3800 Patek Philippe Nautilus, a special example made in platinum.
This is kind of where our retail journey kind of all started, actually. So this wall over here used to look a little bit different. We're in the basement of Landmark, and this place is called Below Ground, and it's basically the concept is they swap out the stores every month or so.
I see.
And so you can have art galleries. It was, I think, fashion stores, and so it's kind of like a pretty cool concept. And they actually gave us, took a leap of faith and allowed us to open our first pop-up.
So Wristcheck actually started here.
Yes.
In what year?
In 2021.
2021.
And so early 2021. But the thing is, we didn't know it was going to work, so we branded it as under Horoloupe. Because in case it didn't work, it would be okay. It was branded around me, but if it was branded around Wristcheck and it flopped, then it would have been very hard for us to continue at the time.
Makes sense. Before we get into the Wristcheck stuff, how did Austen Chu become the guy that's known to be Horoloupe?
Yeah, it was, again, kind of accidental. Started in Shanghai. I grew up in, China. And it was quite lonely. There was no one my age that liked watches. And I learned most of what I know. I mean, in this industry, if you're first generation in this space, kind of the only way is kind of self-teaching, right? And learning by yourself. I didn't have anyone to teach me anything. And so I spent all my time on forums. Rolex forums, Panaristi, Purist Pro, Time Zone, all the OG stuff that we all live through, right? And I was just commenting anonymously, and it was a great community because people didn't really have profiles and everyone was very willing to help each other. Obviously, there were people that would also be very angry, but you learn a lot. And when it shifted to Instagram, that kind of changed. People wouldn't really respond to you because you had a profile.
It became way more personal.
It became personal, and I was using my personal account, Austen Chu at the time, and people wouldn't reply to me anymore. And I thought that was weird. I would message the big accounts, I would message all of this. They'll click my profile, be like, who the fuck is this kid, right? And so I was like, you know what, I might as well just create an anonymous account. And so came up with the name Horoloupe, and it was anonymous for the first four to 5 years, I think. Didn't say my name, didn't post my face, and it was just, that's kind of how it started. And then when I DM'd other watch accounts with Horoloupe, then they would reply. And so it was weird because they would click and be like, oh, he has a watch account. That was kind of the reason. It wasn't like, oh, I wanted to grow it to whatever, or I wanted to like collab with, AP, or none of that was like, the reason why.
So how did AP approach you, or did you approach AP? What's your connection to AP?
When I was 18, saved up all of my money to buy Royal Oak, essentially. And it was a 15400 blue dial. I got it at a discount in the boutique. And I told them at the time, I was like, I can't afford anything else. I was like, this is it, you know? And so I was like, don't try to sell me anything else. I was like, but please invite me to events. I'd like to get to know the brand more. I love the brand. I think I remember showing them like the photo of like the poster in my wall. And they did. And so eventually met the China CEO, and then the Greater China CEO, and then eventually Francois, and it was very organic. That's kind of how it started. And funnily enough, I think the real reason was because there weren't that many VIPs in China at the time that could speak English, but I could.
But your online presence played a huge role for it, right?
I think eventually it didn't start off at all. When I bought my first Horoloupe, I didn't even have Horoloupe. Like, it had nothing to do with that. I started Horoloupe, I think, 2 years after I got my first Royal Oak.
But I mean, they made a special edition for you, or with
eventually,
you.
Eventually, it was because of Horoloupe. I guess their reasoning was I helped reach out, or gave exposure to the next generation.
Yeah. So that's the watch you're wearing right now, right?
Yes.
Can I see it?
Of course.
I've had it in my hand before, but it's always surprising to feel titanium because it's so light. The perpetual calendar, please tell us about it.
Yeah, I mean, the perpetual calendar is my personal favorite complication.
Historically very important also for AP.
Exactly, with the 5516. It's, it's it's a complication that to me, if you're explaining what it does to a non-watch person, they always get mind blown. You're like, it knows if there's 28 days or 29 days, 30 days, 31 days in a year. I mean, in a month, it knows where the moon phase is. And you tell them, oh, by the way, there's no battery. And it just does this.
Everybody's
like,
interested,
what? Right? And then everyone gets interested in the space. And so for me, it was always the complication that fascinated me the most when I was about 15, 16, when I started reading and spending all my time researching about this stuff. And I just always liked high-tech materials. And this watch was the first all-brushed Royal Oak. It was the first Royal Oak perpetual calendar in titanium. This watch is 80 something grams, I forgot exactly, with links taken out, so it's super, super light.
And 88 pieces made, right?
Exactly.
Were they sold out straight away?
Yes, and so this was the first, I think, regional edition that actually sold out almost instantly.
And it was launched in?
January 16th, 2020. And so it was a week before COVID broke out in China.
So show us some more watches that you brought.
This one, I got last year, and is my personal favorite 50th anniversary Royal Oak. It's the open work tourbillon Ref 26735 ST, and it's the most insanely open work watch I think I've laid eyes on.
The layout of the movement is so incredible, and I love, of course, for the 50-year anniversary, all the rotors having the 50 engraved in a rotor, or even open worked. That's amazing.
The base plate is open worked. It's open worked, so it's essentially monochrome, but there's so many different kinds of finishing. There's brushing, there's circular graining, there's beveling. So it's a play with mirror polishing, sandblast, and essentially just satin brushed, right? And so you get, when you're looking at it from different angles, you can just see there's a little bit of contrast, even though it's just the same color.
Yeah,
right?
And I think it's pretty iconic for your style, the way you present things. And even if you look at Wristcheck, I think this is a watch that fits perfectly into that profile.
Yeah, and yeah, it's been on my wrist a lot. I put it on rubber, and it just became a lot more, I guess, casual.
Yeah.
Even though it's sick, it's completely symmetrical. And
it's crazy, man.
Yeah, exactly. So I love this. Jay-Z was the one to first premiere this, I think.
This one was the one you were wearing when we met in Geneva, right? Last time. You were wearing this Debutune.
Yes, this Debutune, yes. And so, yeah, that was actually the first time we met.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was wearing this. And so this Debutune, it's a piece unique. It's a DB28 XP. And so
I love this, man.
It's so thin. I love the floating lugs. It was just a brand, I discovered this brand, I think, like 6-7 years ago, when you can get them for like nothing.
Yeah.
And then I met the brand, and throughout the years during COVID, I thought when they released this watch, I basically messaged them and I was like, hey, would it be possible to do something special? Because I always wanted a fully blued out DB28. But I always told them in the beginning, I was like, oh, I wish the DB28 was a little bit thinner.
Yeah.
And so when they released the XP, I was like, oh, this is the perfect one, right? And so it took like 1.5 years because COVID happened, and like the process of getting the piece unique done kind of stopped a little bit. And there's a nice engraving on the back, which is like it's Latin for through adversity is the stars. And so I thought that was quite a good quote to engrave on a watch that I got during COVID. And it just reminds me, I grew up loving Star Wars, and I love space. I was more Star Wars than Star Trek, but even though this is more Star Trek than Star Wars, it still resonated to me.
It's so futuristic though.
Exactly.
It's crazy.
Looks like a watch from space, and I love it.
But also the store looks a little bit from outer space. I only seen it on Instagram.
Yeah.
I've seen it so many times now. I'm so interested to see the store too.
Yeah.
So let's discuss some more watches.
Yeah.
But first see the store because I'm anxious to see that.
For sure, let's go.
Dope. Finally, man.
Finally, welcome.
We're here. It feels like I'm stepping into the 22nd century.
Good. That's kind of the idea, I'm glad you say that. I mean, welcome to Wristcheck.
Been at it already, had my tarot read. Things are looking up for me, that's what my tarot said. Been pumping out pheromones and wearing red. Young Jerry Oliver King, but they're not aware of it. $40 to show money.
The front space over here, it's more of like, we wanted to treat it more like an art gallery. And so people would come here. We can actually close off the entire space. And so
I can see it. So all the walls can move.
Yes, so all the walls can move. Like even this big wall over here can move.
just like the watches, because I saw that on Instagram.
Yes.
The watches can move, right?
Exactly. And so the watch is over here. You do this, you can just swipe and you can rotate it, which
That
is
is
really,
crazy.
really cool. So I can do it for all of them.
That's unique, right?
Yeah. I mean, like it's with LiDAR tech, and actually the cool thing is the screen actually recognizes your touch. And
Wow.
so right now we're showing videos, but actually it could be whatever we want, right? It could be introductions on the watch, photos, videos, anything.
It's so cool because the store is so digitally advanced, whilst of course the watches are still mechanical.
Exactly.
So it's a very cool paradox. I love it.
Exactly.
So how does the business works here?
Yeah, so it's transparency is at our core.
Yeah.
And for us, that's the most important thing. Buyers know what sellers net, sellers know what buyers pay, and everything is consignment. And so every single watch that you see here, it's only about, I don't know, like 10%, 15% of our inventory is all consigned by mostly end users.
I see.
And so end users would leave their watch here. We take 8% from the seller, up to 4% from the buyer, and it's super transparent.
But you just did get a €8 million funding, right? Or $8 million
US,
funding.
Yes,
Yeah.
USD funding. Really lucky our lead investors are Gobi, which is also the Alibaba Entrepreneur Fund.
But why do you need that funding if you're not buying stock? Because of course it's very capital intensive to trade watches.
Yes.
But if you do it on consignment basis, it's not so much.
Yes, because our ambitions from day one have always been to be a tech-driven platform. And so our app is actually launching in Q2. Right now, all of our tech is in-house. Our website is much more optimized for buyer flow. And in the future, we'll also have a marketplace where people can upload their watches at home. And then when the watch sells or transacts, it gets shipped to us, we verify, and then ship it off to the buyer.
Wow.
And
so that's
so-
going to happen in the future.
Yes.
In the very near future.
Yes, in the very near
And that's
future.
also pretty unique.
Yes, and so for us, that's where we want to expand into.
Yeah.
But always have offline locations in all of our important markets in the future when we grow, to have an offline touch point.
So there are going to be more stores.
I mean, they might not necessarily be as retail driven as this, but more locations in different markets. But that will more come towards next year, not.
Because as of now, you sell most watches in store. Or
So it's interesting. A lot of the times for us, our customer base is very young. And so just under 50% of all of our customers, paying customers, are under 30.
wow.
And
That's crazy.
It's pretty crazy. And
But you're 26 yourself.
yes.
The people
I mean,
need to know that. You're 26. That's insane too.
It's just, I mean, when you're starting a business, you have to put all your eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
Right? Otherwise, don't even start. Like, you know,
Fair play.
I went into that problem before when I started to do I wanted to do multiple things at the same time, but none of it worked out. And I got the best piece of advice was just focus, do one thing, put 100% of your energy into it, which is counterintuitive because most people don't give you that
Yeah.
advice. They're like, oh,
True.
different, like, you know.
But it's also because you're passion driven, I think.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
love watches yourself, so then it's
course.
easier to really focus on one thing only. Because
course.
I can sense in every word you're saying you're a true entrepreneur, but I think it works only this good because you really love your product, you really love the entire market of it. I want to have a look at some of the watches. So what kind of watches do you focus on primarily? Of course, we see Rolex represented very well.
Yes.
One of your favorite brands, Audemars Piguet, is
Yes.
very nicely displayed there, but I also see some very odd ones out. For example, the Bethune, you can see one there too.
Yeah.
So what kind of watches are we looking at?
I mean, for us, primarily, what we sell the most is obviously, in no order, Rolex, AP, Patek. Weighted quite evenly, actually, between the three brands. And for us with AP, we more specialize in a little bit, you know, neo-vintage, discontinued type stuff that are like quite rare, like this Italy edition. They only made
this
50
one I love.
pieces.
They made it with 2 dials, right?
Exactly, the blue dial and the green
That's
dial.
crazy.
This was the first sports watch with a green dial. It was launched in 2003. It was before the Hulk.
And only 50 pieces,
Exactly.
right? Yeah, I know.
exactly.
It's crazy.
And it's a 15202. Technically, it's 2-on-2-on movement.
ultra thin with the caliber 2120.
Exactly.
Yeah, I
It's
know.
just the reference is a little bit different, but it's the only military dial, sporty, ultra thin 15202, right? And
But
so,
you can also provide the bread and butter models like the Submariner
of course,
or
Submariners, Daytonas, of course. Soon we'll usually, right now, I mean, because they sell quite quick, but in the future we're aiming to always have one of each hot model always in the store at all times. That's part of the goal.
Price-wise, you started I see some watches over there around $4,000 or $5,000.
We sell quite a few Tudors as well. So we start at, $2,000 or $3,000 US and go all the way up to, millions and millions of dollars. And so it's kind of the whole range. But initially when we started our business, our average price point was quite high because the effort of selling an expensive watch and the effort of selling a cheap watch is kind of similar, right?
Yeah.
And so
oftentimes even the cheaper ones take more time.
Yes, exactly. And so for us initially, it was more focusing on the high end, but since our website has been optimized in the past month or so, we've been selling a lot of cheaper watches just organically online.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like what we want to continue to build out as well with our app.
It makes sense because digitally, I feel like online is your strong suit also, right?
Yeah.
Especially when you compare it to a lot of other dealers that are a little bit old-fashioned or let's say a little bit of traditionally motivated. For you, it's a beautiful way to blend both the online community to also a retail space. That's something that's pretty unique too.
Yeah, and for me, it's again, a lot of it is about the next gen, like our generation of of enthusiasts, because a lot of the times they walk down the same street, they walk into an official store, they can't leave with anything, and they leave with maybe not the best experience. And so kind of want to give them a location where they can come here offline, actually view all of the cool pieces in person, wear them on, try them, and get inspired by watches. And like that's
but I believe you also kind of source watches for people, right?
Yeah, of course.
Because I think we traded a couple watches, actually pretty rare APs, vintage ones that you bought from me that were for a special client.
Yeah, of course. And so we offer this service as well. We sell to a few celebrities, but for us, sourcing is also very important, and we try to source from, we only source from good people, and so for us, it's that's also very important as well.
Appreciate it. But you just acquired a watch yourself, you told me.
Yes.
That was the watch from the Sultan of Brunei.
Yes.
That's a watch we have to look at.
Yes.
Let's sit down and take a look. And something even more important, I heard you had your own beers.
Yes, we do.
So please allow me to have one.
Yes. Couldn't see it, she felt it. See it all like I'm Elvis. Move my hips like I'm Elvis. I don't pitch it, I sell it. Couldn't picture me jealous. Turning fans into zealots. Tuning in when I tell it. There were 15 people at the gig saying, oh my God, what fun this is. Did it all, did it right, did it big.
So we saw some seriously futuristic pieces.
Yes.
I see you also love your work. You have one in your private collection.
Yes.
Again, the Star Wars stuff, huh?
Yeah, again, this reminds me of being on Tatooine, or like, I'm about to fight Boba Fett or some shit.
Tell me about the complication. It makes absolutely no sense because, of course, you said on the AP, the perpetual calendar is very comprehensible.
Yeah.
But this one is...
this one is more poetic, right? On one side it tells you, on the left side it tells you how far you're rotating around the Earth, and every 20 minutes. And the right side is how far you're flying through space. And then on the left side is how far you're revolving around the Earth. And so basically it's like every 20 minutes. It's completely not really useful, but it reminds us that we're just kind of on a rock flying through space, right?
Well, watch by default is already, to most people, useless.
Yeah, exactly.
So therefore, it's also much more than, of course, telling the time.
Yeah.
And this one is a special piece for sure.
Yeah, and for our work, this is a piece that's most, at least to my eyes, the most symmetrical piece. It's still round, right?
Yeah.
Like the dial, and it wears really well, actually.
It's wearable. Yeah.
And it's very thin on the wrist. The profile is really good.
And I love the rotor.
Yes,
The way it's set up, it's so nice.
Exactly. And so it's like two very different but space-themed-ish watches, right?
And I'm guessing that the Sultan of Brunei didn't order that one, but he went for this. It's an AP, right?
Yes.
In platinum.
Yes.
Grand Sonnerie.
Grand and Petite Sonnerie, 39 millimeters, I think 9.9 millimeters thick. And so it's honestly incredible. Like, it's a watch that when people see you wear it, they have no idea that it's a Grand Sonnerie. It just looks like a three-hander, right?
Yeah.
With the small seconds.
Partly open work dial, that's cool.
Yeah, exactly, and it's a one of one. And so when we came across this watch, first of all, I instantly fell in love with it, but it is written on the back number 1. And so I was like, what if they made a number 2 or number 3, right? And so I had AP check, and they were like, nope, they only made 1. And so then obviously when they checked, I also found out that it happened to be made in my birth year. And so that was like what told me, like, okay, like I have to,
And this is a super recent acquisition, right? You just purchased
Yeah,
this.
it's a super recent acquisition, so 2 months ago or something.
Now I understand why you took us to the private room, because we have to properly enjoy this. You can listen for hours to that, huh?
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes I just leave it on, and so when I'm wearing it, like I would just feel vibrations every 15 minutes of it telling me the time. And yeah, it's in platinum as well, which is very rare for the Grand Sonneries at the time. They only really made these for around a 10-year period, right?
Yeah.
In the 90s.
And especially with the case engraving, which is pretty hard to do on the platinum piece.
Exactly, hard to do on platinum, and also very, very rare for AP to be doing in general, right? For across all their lines. And again, it's a semi-open worked dial, which I mean, it is the only series, the only semi-open work dial that I think they did for the Grand Sonnery. And so yeah, it's a really cool piece. I always put it on different colored straps. It's a white dial, so I put it on like a light purple strap, a pink strap, a pistachio green strap. It looks great. And yeah, just an amazing piece.
I love it, man. Are there any watches on your wish list that you're hoping to acquire in the near future?
I'm hoping to acquire a tantalum platinum open worked 25829, but hard to find for a good price.
Yeah.
They're still quite expensive.
Skyrocketed, huh?
Yeah, exactly. I'm looking for a 5970, but I obviously want something special, like not just like a regular one, but those are again like hard to come by.
Yeah.
But yeah.
No vintage pieces?
5970 is kind of no, it's not.
Well, if you went 3970 or something like that, or 2499, then we're really talking. Yeah.
2499 I think is still a little bit out of my price range, but it is obviously a grail.
My friend, you just got an $8 million funding. Just buy 2499 for yourself.
No, I can't. I mean, that has to be used for tech. Right?
Thank you for showing these beautiful watches.
All good.
We're gonna have the event in a bit, Wristcheck and Amsterdam Vintage Watches. So we're gonna bring out some collectors.
Yes.
From all across the globe, even some Italian guys are coming. Some, of course, local Hong Kong people are coming. You've been generously kind to us. Thank you for that. Also for hosting the event. Before we do that, let's walk around Hong Kong. I need to enjoy the city.
I'll show you around the city.
Thank you
grab
so
a beer.
much, bro.
Thank you.
More beers.
More beers. Let's go.
Let's go.